Welcome to Bible Over Brews. Deep thoughts fermented over time and text. Tonight, I come to you, Aaron Crew Juice Vaverka. We've got Gumby.
Hey, what's happening?
Steve.
Hey.
Mike.
Hola.
And Kelvin.
Greetings.
Tonight we'll be talking about dispensations, Millenium, and Rapture. Everybody's favorite topic.
You picked a good one.
So, some of you may be turning your radio sets off about halfway through. Anyway, we will be sampling Willoughby Brewing Company, and we've got Railway Raz. I'll be honest, I've been looking forward to this night.
Yeah.
He's not the only one.
Oh, man. Railway Raz is just, it's one of those beers that is just so well balanced. I love this beer.
And it has that's that hint of raspberry that's in there, and the tartness of the raspberry, just a slight tartness that gives it a really good taste.
I think the raspberry is pretty bold, but it's not feminine. You know, it's not like a what would be known as a woman's drink. It's kind of like the most manly, fruity drink I've tasted as far as beer goes.
Yeah, despite it being fruity, the sweetness isn't overpowering. Mm-hmm. You know, it just has a very good balance to it.
Absolutely.
It's not like drinking a raspberry pie.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it might be the first time I've ever heard somebody use a manly fruity drink.
I know. Well, last week or last podcast, I wasn't a huge fan of the fruit in the beer.
Okay.
This is, I feel.
Yeah, this is a better balance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, this is not a Kenny G CD kind of beer, you know. It's not that. Don't worry.
How exactly does that go?
I'm a few bars. No, it's I've accidentally discovered Willoughby Brewing Company over at Town Hall through their peanut butter cup porter, which will be our second beer tonight later on.
Which is heaven.
Oh, in a bottle.
Kingdom in a cup.
But actually, yesterday I did the creme brulee coffee,
That one's very good.
Ooh.
and that was really good.
Yeah, that's
If
really
you like
good.
that peanut butter cup, that's a nice second choice.
Yeah, my wife and I actually went out there for dinner one night, and I think I had one of their flatbread pizzas, and I think my wife had spaghetti. But that was one of the beers that we had, and it was excellent.
Aaron, when you poured this, I noticed the first cup had a lot of foam, but mine doesn't taste very carbonated. Do you think pouring it, kind of like got some of the carbonation out in the first one?
Nah, I mean, this is just one of those beers that's not quite as carbonated, but I don't know. It's so well balanced. It's fruity. It's smooth. It's almost like, well, it's more or less a lager, but it's delicious.
Very good.
It could be because it's a growler, too, that we took it out of, and the growler was poured yesterday.
That could be.
So it's settled.
Yeah.
But fun place over in Willoughby. It's got really good food, really good beers. Yeah, I highly recommend going out there and just hanging out and having a good time.
Go on Wednesdays because it's $3 pint night.
Nice.
I now have a goal for my vacation.
Maybe we can have a Bob session there one time.
Oh, that'd be great.
That would be great.
We'll have to talk to the owner.
But they do have a band playing in the background.
Do they?
Yeah. They had a 60s band playing last night. It was decent. They're playing
really?
Beatles
So cool.
and a lot of the old time classics, They're really good too.
We sat around and had some good. Kelvin brought some really, really good stuff. He brought some smoked salmon and wings and all kinds of just awesome stuff. And I brought pretzels. Mike brought a bunch of snacks. So we're filled up.
Yes, we are.
And those wings are really good.
And Calvin, you gave me some competition, buddy.
Don't take it personal.
No, I don't take it personal.
You guys are looking a little lean from the last one.
Well, I wish that was the case. Yeah.
Actually, I consider it a privilege to be able to when you have somebody's great food, it's
Hey,
a
well,
privilege to eat that.
Thank you very much. I'm glad you gentlemen enjoyed it. It's a pleasure bringing it.
You are a smoke master.
Wait till you see the bill, Steve.
What's
I
that?
said, wait till you see the bill.
That's true.
You won't be that privileged.
All right.
Over it, yeah.
Hey, the check's in the mail.
Yep.
Well, he might be the first one raptured tonight.
Ooh.
That could happen, Ken.
Ouch.
We'll use that.
He's
We'll use that as the segue. So we're talking about dispensationalism and her children, the rapture and the millennial reign. So, anybody, what are your thoughts on dispensationalism? The room just got quiet.
It got quiet because I never really got my head around it to really understand exactly what it was. It's early in my Christian walk. I went through a study through it, but it was very confusing to me. So I just kind of never really delved into it really heavily.
It's actually a great evangelical definition of it, isn't it?
That was
Confusing, but we got through it. That sums up so many people's view of it, I
Well,
think.
exactly. But I think since I've been with you guys and things have happened to me to where now I really dig into what's being taught and preached and spoken from our pulpits and from our radio heroes, who we listened to, for all those years, and to realize that, some of them, although they're all wonderful and nice and make you feel good and all this, but really deep down, when it comes down to what they're really actually saying, is it's really not true.
Yeah.
When you actually delve into it and really hone in and put the microscope to it all, and this is another one of those cases where we're kind of led down a little happy trail.
If I could add something to that, I also like to say it seems to be one of those topics when you initially get into it, unless you're going to pursue it with deep intentions, if you just stay on the surface, as you get older and you look back, you really have to wonder, is it structured like that so you don't understand it?
That's a very interesting point. That's a very interesting point.
I've thought that too. Yeah, the more I research it, the more I study
Right.
it. Yeah, it's
Because as you grow, you
yeah.
sit back, why does it have to be so convoluted?
Yeah, I mean, if in the body of Christ, it seems to have caused more division, I think, than than the opposite. Really,
I would agree.
it's not unifying.
Yeah, I would agree.
Very non-unifying because it kind of divides the sides, and if you aren't of one ilk, you are therefore just kind of looked down upon, shunned. Exactly.
Well, to give you a paragraph, each dispensation is marked by a cycle. God reveals himself and his truth to humanity in a new way. Humanity is held responsible to conform to that revelation. Humanity rebels and fails the test. God judges humanity and introduces a new period of probation under a new administration. Ultimately, dispensationalism demonstrates the progress of God's revelation to man and God's sovereignty through history. That's just one paragraph from Wikipedia.
So essentially, we get saved over and over and over again. We disobey, therefore we get punished, and therefore then we're restored, and we go through the cycle over and over and over.
I mean, the idea behind dispensationalism is that there's different quote-unquote dispensations, and that I believe there's 7, that supposedly took place, and that each one man has failed, and so God brings about a new trial, a new dispensation to try to bring mankind back under his wing again. It's actually here. I'll sum it up once again. I'm going to use the masterful Wikipedia again. We've got the first, which is innocence, Adam under probation prior to the fall. Ends with expulsion from the Garden of Eden. Some refer to this period as the Adamic period, or the dispensation of Adamic covenant or Adamic law. The next would be conscience, from the fall to the great flood. Ends with the worldwide deluge. Human government, after the great flood, humanity responsible to enact the death penalty. Ends with the dispersion at the Tower of Babel. Some use the term Noahide law in reference to this period of dispensation. Conspiracy theorists, perk your ears up. Promised from Abraham to Moses. Ends with the refusal to enter Canaan and the 40 years of unbelief in the wilderness. Some use the terms Abrahamic or Abrahamic covenant in reference to this period of dispensation. Law, from Moses to the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. Ends with the scattering of Israel in AD 70. Some use the term Mosaic law in reference to this period of dispensation. Grace, from the cross to the rapture of the church. The rapture is followed by the wrath of God, comprising the Great Tribulation. Some use the terms age of grace or the church age for this dispensation. And finally, millennial kingdom, a 1,000-year reign of Christ on earth centered in Jerusalem. Ends with God's judgment on the final rebellion. Okay, now it's perfectly clear, right?
Clear as mud.
I just wanted to make sure that you understand it now and that you fully comprehensible. Dispensationalism, we'll get into the history in just a little bit. We're going to explain each one of the three topics before going into the history of it. But it's one of those weird laws that just mankind kind of created. Because if you go through the Bible, there actually is no set dispensations. I mean, the word dispensation is used at one point, but so are a lot of other words, And obviously in some Bibles Jehovah's used, but I'm not a Jehovah's Witness, right? So, right? I go on and on and on with that. But it's just one of those man-made systems where people sat down and tried to create something to try to understand it better. But I think more or less muddied the waters. Any thoughts on that?
Well, this was brought up previously. If you speak about another religion, it could be whatever you're following, but there's a basic structure that unites that group, and they follow that. Well, if we're all under one banner, it's created dissension among many of us because we come to different conclusions because of the way it's presented to us. You know what I mean? It's hard to digest, understand, tolerate, and then if for those who are the real hardcore sticklers, and not knocking anybody who chooses not to follow it in depth, that's not where I'm going with this. But for those who are really trying to become the utmost student, and I'm trying to break this down, then you have to question once you continue. Well, man, why is it so structured? Why is it written this way? Or why is it presented this way? Then you question, their agenda for presenting it this way. How sincere are you? Or is there an ulterior motive? And then you're right back to where you started. Different views.
Right. One may even wonder if dispensationalism isn't even worse than all the extra laws that were set down by, say, the Catholic Church. I mean, if you look at it, the Catholic Church, there's a lot of rules, but the Catholic Church is still around, and just about as strong as it ever was, about as many as there ever was. So in reality, it's almost like the antithesis of what dispensationalism has caused. If you look at, and I use that because there's more laws and rules and regulations in Catholicism than there is in, say, Orthodoxy. Orthodoxy is a little more lenient on that stuff. But I mean, they're still around. They're still going strong. Whereas dispensationalism has given birth to who knows how many denominations now. How many? Well, it has been very lucrative for a few people, though.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, it's true.
Left Behind series and right.
Leave Kirk Cameron out of this, okay?
But actually, it's really strange because I'm actually involved in, as you guys probably know, that I'm leading a movement of 60 days praying for the nations.
Which is admirable.
One of the nations that we prayed for, that was prayed for this week, was it was a predominantly Christian nation, mainly because of the efforts of a particular denomination. But however, it's caused a huge nominalism, I guess, basically among the people because of a wealth and prosperity gospel that was preached to them in a very not so wealthy country that's very deals with poverty and deals with starvation and just the resources really are not there to make anybody wealthy. So it causes a lot of confusion, and that's one of the things that was on the prayer request, that to pray against that because of well-meaning intended people, however, in wrong context.
How dare you, Steve? Trying to take everybody's Lamborghinis away.
Well, they're lucky if they even have a bicycle, let alone a Lamborghini.
Only because their faith isn't high enough.
I understand that. Neither is mine.
Yeah, you know what rubs me wrong about dispensationalism and that whole, in the big picture, for me, it leaves a lot of gray areas with under the umbrella of Christianity. And when there's a lot of gray area, I hate to bring up the word, but I'm going to bring up the word. Things can get political, and people will use certain aspects of quote unquote Christianity and politicize it, and and go on these conquests or have wars, and all of these different theologies somehow always seem to match up just right to back things up. So it's hard for me to really separate a lot of the thoughts, a lot of the ideas of dispensationalism, and not be it political anymore. I see so much of it playing out.
Well, I'll throw a big wrench in this right now, just with our nation alone.
Sure.
And many Christians believe that we are a Christian nation. We are not a Christian nation. We are a republic. And that's how our founding fathers had created it as. And everybody believes that we are a fully 100% Christian nation, and that is not. We're a melting pot here.
Right.
And we offer freedom and things like that, which is the awesomeness of our country, but we are not a Christian nation. Yeah. And I know all these people just turned it off.
Well, that's a great
sorry.
point. Yeah. No. I mean, for me, I think about theology, and I think it's Brother Nathaniel Kapner who says, at least I've heard him say it, bad morals follow bad theology. And when I look at our country and our morals and how we're acting out of certain things, I can find a thread through dispensationalism, and you can start tying some things together.
Absolutely.
And why it doesn't change, why it continues, and somehow it's still justified. It's baffling.
That's where the conspiracy theories come in.
I'm not even going to say it. All right, I'm the room conspiracy theorist. I know.
No, our radios are definitely turned off.
But you know what? It cracks me up. The mental and spiritual hoops we have to jump through to still call ourselves a Christian nation, despite everything. I know there's a lot of great people individually. I'm not talking about an individual's
We understand where you're going.
But corporately as a nation, when I see our actions, I agree with you, Steve. It's hard to call ourselves a Christian nation. Maybe a godly nation. Someone could say there's an argument for that, but then whose God are we serving?
Absolutely.
but not
Yeah.
Christian.
There's a
Christian.
term I often use when I'm referring to myself. I say, if I'm Joe Blow and I see this, I have no title, I have no big organization that I'm leading. I'm just a person trying to find my way and trying to be the best I can. If I see this, are you saying the upper echelon doesn't? Something's wrong somewhere.
Yeah.
If I can break this down, and I might not be as astute as somebody else who studies or is involved on a far deeper level than I am, that's understandable. But they know where I'm going.
Yeah.
And they'll try to be evasive when it's presented.
It's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I love Brother Nathaniel.
Yeah, you're right, man. Love you, man.
Let's step off to the first child, the Rapture. Now, this brings up a question. Who in the room is going to bet on a pre-trib rapture? Anybody? Okay,
I used to be pre-trib.
mid-trib? Oh, at least a post-trib, right? No? Oh, okay. Because, at some point it's got to happen, right?
Imminence.
In Christian eschatology, the rapture refers to the predicted end-time event when all Christian believers, living and resurrected dead, will rise into the sky and join Christ for eternity. This event is predicted and described without the term rapture in Paul's first epistle to the Thessalonians. We'll stop there for a second.
Let's dissect that piece of scripture right there in Thessalonians 4.
We're going to go through the passages in the second half of the podcast. We are doing that.
You always save the best for last.
And I want you to put this on your brains right now. Are you a splitter or are you a joiner? All right? So keep that in the back of your head because we'll be asking that question later. But that it's a weird argument. I see all these people getting into huge, like 100+ long, threaded debates online, on various forums about no, it's definitely a pre-trib, pre-wrath deal, and that's where you bring up your doctrine of eminence from, right?
Yeah.
Because God can appear at any time. Jesus can appear at any single moment, right?
Yep.
He can.
But only pre-tribbers say that, because only pre-tribbers believe that there are no signs. Everybody else, whether you're mid-trib, post-trib, amillennial, preterist, everybody else, well, preterists might walk a different line. Anyway, anybody else believes that there's signs to the second coming. And if there's no signs to the second coming, and it's imminent at any time, you are a pre-tribber.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many sermons I've been through hearing these words. Before we leave this service, you can come back right now at the sound of a trumpet. And that's why I want to take up this last offering. A second
More
time.
about the offering than it is anything else. But I think one of the things, if you look at the nature of God, who He is, and as Yahweh, He can do anything.
No argument.
And there's no argument with that. And to appear at any given moment can happen at any given moment, but doesn't make it mean that this sign of his appearance would be a certain thing.
But now, are you applying that to the coming wrath, okay, and us getting raptured out before that, or are you talking about the second coming? Because that defines whether you're a pre-tribber or whether you're an amillennialist. Because if you're an amillennialist, when he comes back, it's the second coming. That's it. It's all done. If you're a pre-tribber, then you are getting pulled out at that point. And then the wrath takes place on all those heathen Gentile scum that didn't believe.
Well, the other thing I have to say to that is that
So rough.
actually, if you look at how God is operated, I mean, He's the same in the Old Testament as He is in the New Testament. If you look at that, and nothing comes easy, and that is probably the easiest way out that you could ever think about. As long as I believe in Jesus and make Him Yahweh, I'm taken care of, and I'm going to be blinked out of here, and I don't have to put up with this life no more. And if that was the case, then why would God go through all the things that He went through when all He had to do was just blink and it was over?
We're glad to see you are invested in the millennial fire insurance.
What I'm trying to say is that the fire insurance thing, which I can't stand, So I mean, the thing is to realize that God builds character in our life. I'm digesting this. So you're getting a big, huge outward version of all this, and I don't know what I believe right now, to be really straight up and honest with you. And I, you know what? I think a lot of it's a lot of stuff is a lot of hogwash, personally.
But that's honest.
Thanks,
that's good.
Steve. That's
And I agree with that.
That's
And I don't
admirable.
think God put me on this earth to just pull me right out of here in a blink of an eye and that's it, because you know what? I'm here for a purpose and a reason, and that's what He brought me here for that reason. And how that works out. And I also believe that the kingdom of heaven they talk about is right here, because it's in a realm that we don't see. It's in the air around us that we don't see. And as they say, when you pull that envelope over and look at that spiritual realm that's on that other, as they call that fourth and fifth, sixth dimension that's out there, that's more believable. To realize that He is, they say, there's dimensions that are talked about, this new heaven and earth that's going to come down. To realize that it's a, when you look at the size of that, it's not a really huge area, and something has to fit in all that. And it's not like 5 people are going to get, 5 people are going to be there or whatever, but it's everybody who has believed in Yahweh, has accepted Him as their Lord, and been let Him lead their life. And you know what? In that other realm, it fits.
a good point.
Very good point.
Didn't somebody in the New Testament say, "Behold, the kingdom of heaven is among you"?
Right?
That's
Absolutely
interesting.
right.
Yeah. Forgot his name.
Doggone it.
It's the beer.
Well, that's why I don't commit, because I think, the more I research and kind of venture off from the beaten path, I feel like the more I feel at ease with not knowing for sure. So being non-committal to any of these labels, I feel that's where I'm most comfortable. For example, I could foresee half the people being removed from the earth before catastrophe happens. But not that catastrophe didn't take them from the earth, like a nuclear bomb, but the fact that they didn't suffer the repercussions of that, and we don't know the plan. So I could see all being right. I could see none of them being right. I can see I'm just waiting, because I think God meets us, when He went to the cross and He rose again, and saints rose again, and your time is your time, God's time is God's time, and we all probably have a time with God. If we die before He comes back, I don't believe we wait. We're there in heaven. So that's just my little soapbox.
No, that's good.
It's a
That's
very
good.
good point.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. And
It has to be okay to say that, we just don't have the answer. Not for sure.
I admire the fact that everybody's, or as a group, we don't have a problem stepping out of the box, maybe from a traditional standpoint. I think that's what's wrong with many of us. We feel that, I don't want to be looked at funny. I don't want to feel that I'm not going along with the group. Yeah, you're trying to be the best you can be as you learn, as you grow, as you polish yourself. So as you feel your way, it's just like a baby walking. Mm-hmm. You're studying, and you're not going to finish studying until you pass on. That's the way it should be.
Yeah.
And I'm not a lemming.
Let's not go too far.
Well, I think the different views are fine. I honestly don't believe the end is written down anywhere. Not even in the Bible. I don't believe that the end is written down anywhere. And I might be trailing off a little bit here, but if God gave us a roadmap of all the end times events, then this little guy over here that we call the devil or Satan or Lucifer or Ben Hel al Shaka, whatever, this little guy over here, he'd be like, okay, well, I know he's going to do this, I know he's going to do this, and he'd be able to create all the plans he wanted to, right? He'd be like, okay,
Absolutely.
well, I know he's going to do this tomorrow. Let's see.
I'll prepare.
Let's see. He gets his hair cut on Wednesday. He's got to pick up his car on Tuesday. I'm going to plant the bomb over here on Friday, right? So it's like, I honestly don't believe that it's written down anywhere solidly for us. I believe there's hints, but you can't lay down. That's like us walking over during the Cold War and saying, yo, Russia, hey, we're going to do this right now. Right? Or during Afghanistan, just walking over and, telling the poor goat herders what we're going to do next, right? So, I mean, it's ridiculous. So, honestly.
But actually, I think that really cheapens our salvation, too. Because if it was certain signs, I could do whatever I want to do, and then all of a sudden, decide, okay, I'm going to get right now, 2 minutes before it all happens, because I know the plan.
You're absolutely right.
And you know what? That's hypocrisy at its best. And Jesus seen right through that. And like he says, we don't know the day or the hour. So why are we going around predicting something that we don't know? And he said we don't know it. And he doesn't even know it.
That's why I've heard the fire insurance joke a few times, but I actually think that's what you guys are saying right now. You need to buy the fire insurance. You just don't need to use it as a tactic, as a sales tactic. You know what I mean? Like it's okay to know ramifications for procrastinating and not really committing your life to the Lord. Go ahead, Aaron. I know something's getting ready to explode here.
I honestly don't. I don't believe in fire insurance. That's okay. If we shoot back to the Middle Ages, the Constantine, for example. Why did Constantine not get baptized until he was on his deathbed?
He felt it's now time to make the sacrifice?
No. Because during early Christianity all the way through into the Middle Ages, people figured, oh, you know what? If I commit to Christianity, then I have to stop everything else I'm doing. I have to stop sinning. I have to stop. Right. And so what they would do is they would postpone their baptism until their deathbed. That's fire insurance. Okay. What I'm talking about is I believe in, and hey, crucify me for this, I believe in a progressive salvation.
Well, what Constantine did, is it any different than what the thief did next to Christ on the cross?
Well, yes.
But he didn't get baptized,
there is.
though.
But the thief on the cross, he had an excuse. He didn't know the Savior until he was on the cross next to him.
I see what you're saying, yeah. Whereas Constantine knew about it all along, and he chose not to.
Correct. And that was a common practice. Right. It wasn't just him. It was actually a very common practice.
Because he liked his sin.
Right.
Right.
And you're not responsible until you get baptized. So, and I do believe in a progressive Christianity. Like I was saying last time, like martial arts. Yeah, I'm going to start martial arts now. Doesn't mean I'm a good martial artist. Just means I'm committed to martial arts. So yeah, I am a martial artist, but I'm not a good martial artist, right? I can't even do a head kick when I start. I can't do anything. Squat. I'm can barely get a stance right? So I do believe in a progressive salvation because you should get better at your faith throughout your life. Your life should get better, your walk should get better, your faith should get better. You should know what you believe throughout your life as you progress in your spiritual journey. So I do believe in a progressive salvation, working your salvation out with fear and trembling.
Yeah, and I agree. That's not what I mean by fire insurance. And waiting till the last minute, you can't even buy insurance if you're on your deathbed, because who in their right mind is going to insure you for that? Hey, my house is on fire. Can I buy fire insurance? No, it's not working like that.
You mean that they're not selling it for moral reasons?
Right. So
there could be an app for that.
The scriptures that even back up with what you're saying, though, Aaron, when even Paul says that you should work out your salvation with fear and trembling, and it is a progress. Because if it wasn't a progress, and if you made your commitment to Christ, then you would immediately be perfect.
Right.
And God didn't make it that way. And so it is a lifestyle. It is decisions that you make. And you make many poor decisions as you progress. But as you learn from those decisions, because a lot of those decisions have repercussions. And they have consequences.
If I could add something to that too.
Please.
Here's a good example. We don't even go the martial art route. You as a father, me as a father, we've been knowing each other a long time.
Long time.
From your first child to the one that you have now.
Oh, this is gonna be a hard
Have you not progressed tremendously as a father? Have you evolved tremendously?
Yes, I have.
To me, that's the walk in faith. That's the polish. That's to analyze your views and say, I don't want my children to do some of the same mistakes that I did, and I want them to have a stronger structure from the wisdom. The same with me, So
That's a great point. I think
totally
there's some
agree.
stories I think Calvin wants to tell.
I know we're gonna leave it at that.
But even Sunday, when we had that conversation with your daughter, Aaron,
Yeah.
and she was like, she looked so like surprised, like, wow, this guy's saying the same thing my dad says.
Right.
But you know what? It was neat to see her really understand it. And
you were saying the same thing?
I was talking like her dad.
Okay.
To her, but just talking about general things in life with her, and she was just so like, but it was kind of, it validated him very much so. But what happened with it was that she realized that all of a sudden she realized like life is just not an easy thing. And that what appears to be good is not always good. And she was like surprised by that. And so, I mean, it was a really neat conversation that we had with her to realize that, wow. And it was like, I mean, I walked away with it and I thought, what did I just say? Exactly. But, it's like, but I said, but I just seen it in her. It was like the light bulb just started going off.
Absolutely.
Which is really, I mean, that's what we're here for, to help our young people, to help others, to help them grow it. It's because she has to work out her salvation.
Yeah.
It's something we have to do each by ourselves, and I think what these things that we're talking about today, I think they cheapen that.
It's good for kids too, because sometimes they think, at least I know with my kids, they're like, I hope somebody else is thinking like you, Dad, because I don't want to just think you're crazy, man. Does Aaron talk about that? Yeah. Okay. Or does Steve think that way?
Too.
Yeah, he thinks that way. We might not all agree on everything, or we're figuring things out, but I'm not the only one out there thinking these things.
Right.
And it's a safe place to kind of work these thoughts out.
And what I like about your kids is your kids question everything.
They do.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You just can't tell them something and they just walk away. Oh yeah. They question it.
But what's important too? It's important for you to let them know that it's okay to question.
Sure. Yeah.
Depending on some routes or some branches of religions that you've been raised in, don't question this.
Right.
Take it.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's
your kids are like
instilled in
that
you.
too, Mike.
Yeah, we'd like to think they were raised in a safe place. I think it's interesting because as you go through your journey as a Christian, you have these people that maybe you put on pedestals, and then as you solidify your relationship and realize you differ, and you step away from the people you've sort of idolized, there's a cleaving, painful process, and then you pull away. And then once that healing happens, you're just that much more sound. I've seen it in myself. I've seen it in my wife, where I'd come home and talk to her about things we've talked about here, and she'd get offended. And I realized after a while that was fear. She didn't want to cleave from some of the really dogmatic thoughts, and it feels scary because you're stepping away from the main group. But then once you do and you find, yeah, exactly, we don't want to be out. We're social people.
Yeah, it's true.
And but then you feel like you're on your own 2 feet and you get more brave in your decision. I'm sure there's an Achilles heel to that too. You can't get careless with it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And my wife says, "Now explain this all to me," because she wants to learn about it. And then, to me, it's like, okay, I don't remember it all. So it's like, so I'm trying to explain it, and all of a sudden, which my wife is way deeper than I am, and very much because she was raised Orthodox.
Right.
So there's a lot of that in her, and so when I start talking about things of Orthodoxy, she corrects me a lot of times, well, you're not totally right, but which is okay. But my wife is a very much so she doesn't accept anything from anybody. She doesn't trust anybody. She's been burnt very hard by the church, and she's very standoffish. But you just can't say anything. And that's how she got saved, because we went to a Bible study, and she didn't believe him. And so she stayed up all night and pulled her Bible out and determined that what this teacher had taught was correct. And she gave in to Christ. And she read a itty bitty little small print Bible and stayed up all night and read it.
You don't have to go into great detail, but can I just ask, what is her belief on the rapture? Did she believe in the rapture or any?
I think we're not sure yet.
Okay.
We wore in that direction because of the teachings and things that we've kind of went under, which is very much the Orthodox Church doesn't believe in the rapture.
No.
Excellent point.
So that was kind of that was one of those things where she's kind of really wrestled with it. And then she kind of went out of that realm and totally went the evangelical realm.
Yeah.
And now she's kind of, she's sort of circling back to the Orthodox thought process a little bit, but she's kind of, because of some of the things that happened to her through the Orthodox Church, she's still a little bit, she doesn't, there's a fight going on right now with all this.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
I can add yours that no church that's over 500 years old believes in a rapture.
Yeah,
So-
it's not there.
No.
It's literally a newer movement within
Over the last 200 years.
Christianity. It's
Well, the 1800s.
1812,
Yeah.
to be precise.
But to me, it's a cheap way out.
and I only asked that about your wife. I didn't want to dig too deep
No,
into
that's
that
fine.
because
Yeah.
my wife, she grew up in a pastor's family, evangelical Assemblies of God, and they were born and bred knowing all of that doctrine. And from a little child, and I can even relate to this, we remember all of these teachings, all of these movies that were downright scary and abusive to little kids
Right.
about being taken away from your parents or being on a swing, your mommy's pushing you, all of a sudden you look back and no one's there, or the kid's
Right.
gone, or being on an airplane and then the plane's going down because the pilot, went up to Jesus.
Absolutely right.
All of these crazy things I remember watching, and my wife, was born this, raised with the same teachings, and it's fear indoctrinating.
Mm-hmm.
To go back to our indoctrination word, but it really is.
Thank you, Mike.
And I'm not saying that this is anybody's agenda or anything, but if you're looking to control a group mind
Excellent way to do
via
it.
dispensationalism, it's a great way to do it.
Yeah, and you're right about the media, Hollywood, Because it wasn't just the Left Behind series, which
Oh my gosh, remember Distant Thunder, A Thief in the Night?
right, but not
Remember
only
those?
that,
Oh, yeah.
it's
Yeah.
even
Oh, yeah.
now.
Remember those back?
Never heard.
Oh my gosh. You can,
these were
you
back
can-
in the 70s.
Yeah,
I
you can
remember
watch them
those.
on YouTube. It's
But it never stopped. I mean, Nicolas Cage
Yeah.
did a Left Behind movie.
Yeah.
But not only that, if you even up till now, HBO has a whole series running. It's in its third season called The Leftovers. And it's all about the people who were left over after the rapture, and it tells their story.
yeah.
That's completely secular, and even they're cashing in on it.
Yeah.
So
Steve, I want to say something. When you said there's a fight, when you're speaking of your wife, how the fight is going on a little bit. I always think the fight is good
The fight is good.
because that means you're not dormant.
And my wife's not the person where you just can't just dupe her over, because she will
Yeah.
just grab a hold of it like a bulldog
Right.
on a piece of leather, man.
Because you're still searching.
Sorry, dear. Don't mean it. That wasn't
No.
meant in
Very
bad
descriptive.
taste.
I understand. No, I understand totally.
warriors are forged in the fires of adversity.
Exactly.
This is
I wrote
true.
that a long time ago.
But that's a trait that she has that I've kind of taken up too, to realize that you just don't accept things as they're given to you,
Yeah.
and you got to put some fact behind it. You got to put research about it, and she's kind of taught me that.
That's great. My wife never truly believed in it too. It took me a long time in our marriage to finally realize that about her, until we actually had to talk about it. She was like, "Oh yeah, I never really believed that anyway." And I was just blown away. I'm like, "Well, it's true," because at the time I remember a lot of Hagee books around and Copeland, but Hagee is like the
Next level.
father right now of dispensationalism.
And I love
He's-
the brother
he's-
Nathaniel.
Koofy.
He's the biggest pusher of this right now. I mean,
He's quite the salesman.
and I would just remember being blown away, thinking, "Well, wait a minute, you were a pastor's daughter, and you're telling me you don't believe this?" No. And
Yeah.
Women seem to be ahead of the guys a little bit.
Generally, they are.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm still trying to pull my wife out of it, but and the rapture is supposed to have specific attributes. So like the tribulation begins, the latter half of which is called the Great Tribulation. The Antichrist begins his cruel reign in the middle of the 7 years. He prescribes Jewish worship at the temple. Terrible judgments fall on the earth. A remnant of Israel, 144,000, believes in Jesus as the Messiah and preaches the gospel of the kingdom. Through their witness, a multitude of Gentiles are saved. Toward the end, a number of military battles take place, leading up to the Battle of Armageddon. And that really encapsulates the idea of what the rapture entails, the events around the rapture. So,
Yeah, and again, if there's any political motivations anywhere, that's some really good doctrine to go by.
yeah.
I'm just saying, I'm just throwing that out there. Do what you want with it.
Well, here's a quote from one of the rapture-ready type of propaganda. At the end of this 7-year period, dispensationalists teach Christ, together with the church, returns in glory and destroys his enemies. The vast majority of Israelites will be converted. Satan will be bound for 1,000 years. Believers who died during the tribulation and Old Testament saints will be raised and join the church in heaven. Christ will judge the living Gentiles. The quote-unquote goats will be cast into hell. The quote-unquote sheep and the believing Jews still living will enter the millennium in their natural bodies. They will marry, reproduce, and die. The resurrection believers will live in the heavenly Jerusalem, hovering above the earthly Jerusalem. The millennium will be a golden age, a time of prosperity and peace with worship centering around the rebuilt temple. Now I'm going to stop right there. I still don't understand the rebuilt temple. I really don't. Why do we need a rebuilt temple? As Dr. Heiser says, why don't you just hand them a Bible?
Yeah.
Why do they need to look at sacrifices? Did
Well-
any of us need to see sacrifices to believe?
It's as simple as saying is what Christ did wasn't good enough. It
Right.
wasn't sufficient.
Right?
I mean, that's kind of blunt, but
Yeah.
if we still need the temple, so we're not the temple, and we still need
So
sacrifice.
you're looking at a building as a
Yeah, they believe that the quote unquote second temple, which technically would be the third temple, by the way, because there's been two temples.
Okay.
But anyway,
Both
they believe,
destroyed.
yeah, right. They believe the second temple will be rebuilt, sacrifices will be reestablished during the millennial kingdom. Now, I really don't understand that, because isn't the lion supposed to lay down with the lamb? Right? Isn't all this violence supposed to cease? Well, then,
right. Yeah.
what's up with the sacrifices? It's kind of a bloody mess.
I think. Well, within Orthodox Judaism, that's when they believe their Messiah will come. You know, they don't, and again, I mean, it's taboo or not, they don't believe Jesus is the Messiah, so they're still anticipating their earthly Messiah.
Right. That's
and
true.
So that's why they want a temple. That's why there's going to be sacrifices until then.
Yeah. And that leads us into the millennium.
It's a little bit of a rub.
Millennialism is a specific type of Christian millenarianism and is sometimes referred to as Chiliasm, from the New Testament use of the Greek kilia, 1,000. It is part of the broader form of apocalyptic expectation. A core doctrine in some variations of Christian eschatology is the expectation that the second coming is very near and that there will be establishment of kingdom of God on earth. According to an interpretation of prophecies in the book of Revelation, this kingdom of God on earth will last 1,000 years or more. The application of an apocalyptic timetable to the establishment or changing of the world has happened in many cultures and religions, etc., etc., etc. I'm going to add to this because here's one thing that they don't talk about when it comes to the millenarianism, Kellyism, etc., etc., etc. If there's a rapture before the tribulation, before the millennium, then isn't that a third coming? Because we always talk about the second coming, but technically, if people are raptured, and then that's would be a third coming, right? I mean,
It does put him in that position.
I'm no calculus master, but I can count 1 to 5.
But also,
You do
why?
have a point.
But if we had a rapture, then we would be propelled into heaven in a perfect kingdom. To be returned back to what? Really? No, I want to stay here. If I'm going there, I want to stay there around where Jesus is, you know? I don't want to come back here.
Yeah.
You're right.
Well, and again, the whole idea of it really, really seems to just chip away at the work of Christ, the work he did here,
Right.
and the work we're supposed to model our lives after to do on earth. It negates that responsibility.
Yeah. We're going to touch on that in the second half, too, because there's ramifications of this teaching that go much deeper and hurt the church in many, many ways. But we'll touch on that in the second half, coming up here shortly.
I know Cleveland, as a city, was kind of duped by the second coming because we thought that was LeBron finally coming from Miami. But, sorry, that's the.
Yeah, but lightning can't strike twice.
Talk about it. He's going to come a third time, and we're going to take that gold again.
That's right. We're not complaining about it.
It'll be
So,
a three-peat.
so here's where it gets interesting. Let's go over the history of dispensationalism. And I think that one of the things that really pushes the idea of dispensationalism forward is because people actually don't understand the history of it. People always think, oh, it's been taught since the beginning. And it hasn't. It's actually only been the last 200 years. So let's go over this real quick. I'm going to read off this. John Nelson Darby learned of the idea of a quote-unquote rapture from Edwin Irving, a minister that founded the Catholic Apostolic Church, where he was so successful that they built a larger church to house his growing congregation. It wasn't long, however, before his parishioners began to wane with his increasing emphasis on end times messages. Does this sound familiar?
Just a tad.
Okay.
I know a few pastors.
Just a tad.
It was in 1826. He was the center of a school of the prophets, quote unquote, which echoes the early, during David's time, there was a school of the prophets in the Old Testament, which published the Morning Watch, or Quarterly Journal of Prophecy, periodically from 1829 to 1833. In 1828, his doctrine of the Incarnation opened aroused opposition for its denigration of the human side of Christ's nature. Once again, that echoes back to the councils. Christ's human side. Geez, where have we heard that before? Wasn't that part of the apostasies in the early church? Yeah, Jesus wasn't really human. Right?
This almost sounds like Jehovah's Witness.
It goes through and through and through.
That's true. I mean, back then, immediately identified as heresy.
Right?
Today,
Not so much.
make a good book.
Right?
Right.
Once again, once you get away from the councils. Anyway, after a similar work by him appeared in 1830, he was charged in ecclesiastical courts with maintaining the sinfulness of Christ's humanity, quote unquote. Despite his protest that he had been misinterpreted, he was excommunicated by the London Presbytery, and in 1833 he was deposed from his ministry by the Church of Scotland. Now this is where it gets interesting. Enter Schofield. During this period, he also came under the influence of a Dallas Presbyterian minister who had imbibed the dispensationalist teachings of John Nelson Darby and the Plymouth Brethren. In 1888, Schofield wrote his own book about dispensationalism, rightly dividing the word of truth, which catapulted him into the ranks of the doctrine's foremost apologists. This is where it gets really, really interesting, and this is where the course of Western theology changed across predominantly America. At the invitation of D.L. Moody himself, that name sounds familiar, Schofield resigned his Dallas pastorate in 1895 and moved to Northfield, Massachusetts, to become pastor of a congregational church there and assist in managing the annual Northfield Bible Conference, and eventually became the president of the Northfield Bible Training School. Feeling called to produce a reference Bible that would embody all of the dispensationalist and higher life emphasis of the Bible Conference movement, Schofield resigned from his other duties in 1903 and turned his attention full-time to his project. The Schofield Reference Bible was published in 1909 by Oxford University Press, and it and various revised versions became a fixture within conservative Protestant circles, eventually selling more than 2 million copies. I almost choked on that word. It was often joked that its readers had a difficult time separating the biblical text from the volume's copious notes. Schofield continued on as a popular speaker, and in 1914, with his protege Louis Sperry Chafer, founded the Philadelphia School of the Bible. So this is where we find ourselves today, because how many people know somebody who has a Schofield Reference Bible?
Actually, I have one.
I have one.
I have one.
So right there, at least 2/3 of us. You never had one?
I don't know. Now I know people that have them, but
Mike, Gumby?
Oh, are you kidding me? Yeah, I didn't know there were other ones out there.
Right?
Yeah.
So right there, I mean...
What is Greek? What is Hebrew? What is that?
Who needs Hebrew if I have a Schofield Bible?
Yep.
I mean, that tells you everything you need to know.
I'll spare listeners my little song about Schofield's nose. I did it last time. It is so true. I mean, there was so many of his notes in there now. And I won't say the P word again because I already said political, so I won't say it again. But it did a lot of different things to Christianity here in the West.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, most churches in the West that are of the Protestant persuasion, it's all about the Schofield Bible. That's really what it boils down to. I mean, I've actually been in churches. I don't know if you guys have. I've been in churches where they actually would say, oh, turn to this page. Oh, and it's going to be this page in your Schofield Reference Bible. I mean, where it's actually, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I've been to churches like that.
Right. So, I mean, it's that prevalent.
Printed, those Bibles, by Oxford Printing Press. I will not say who funded Oxford, but the listener can Google that themselves, see where the money came from. Always a money trail.
Yeah, you're right.
Follow the money.
That's good stuff, Aaron.
Thank you.
You don't think there was trying to influence anybody, Pete?
No. I don't know what you're talking about.
Join us in part 2 for the rest of the conversation.